The American Western story. At one time, one of the most prolific forms of storytelling, and one that is uniquely American. The Western is American history. That doesn't mean that Westerns are historically accurate, or that they can't be written by a Brit from the English Isles. The American frontier provides environment and customs of the Western, the cowtowns, landscapes, and characters. Traditionally fixed between 1860 and 1890 and set in sparsely settled areas west of the Mississippi, it is but a blink in the process of Western expansion. From the late 1800s, with the advent of dime novels and the mythologizing of real-life gunfighters like Wyatt Earp, Clay Allison, and Wild Bill Hickok, people have been fascinated with the idea of the West and its concepts. The Western terrain can be seen as barren and savage, or seen as a community, a positive force. It can represent the introduction of law and order to a brutal land, or it can represent the freedom and integrity so lacking in a civilized Eastern society. The players that inhabit this land and these stories are gunfighters, lawmen, and desperados, ranchers, cattle barons, cowboys, and gamblers, ladies, soiled doves, angels, and outlaws. The Western story has seen the heights of popularity in books, video games, comics, and movies, and has barely survived through extreme lack of interest for a number of years. Once seeming to fade into the sunset, the Western has experienced a resurgence in popularity. Its future looks brighter than ever, and its enduring spirit and timeless themes ensure its relevance and appeal moving forward in a modern, more complex world. Hi everyone, Jim here. Welcome to Westerns, Whiskey, and Widows. And no, you haven't fallen into an alternate universe. I'm happy to announce that I was chosen as a co-host for this year's June on the Range. Now, June on the Range was created by Michael K. Vaughan over on his great channel. And June on the Range is an event where you read Westerns all month long. Now, the only stipulations are set down by Michael was to read one Zane Grey novel and one Louis L'Amour novel. And the rest of the month, as long as you read those, I think he said that you can read 2 more novels, but what I plan to do is once I read a Zane Grey and a Louis L'Amour novel, I'm just going to immerse myself in Westerns the entire month. I mean, movies, video games, I read as many books as I can. I mean, the Western genre has been a favorite of mine since I've been a kid, and I have tons of Western novels. I have both Red Dead Redemption games, and I intend to play that game throughout the month of June. So I'm not going to stick to any kind of a TBR, because TBRs are not my friend. I don't stick to them anyway. But I do have a few books that I've chosen that I'll just, I'll go throughout the month and see what I feel like reading. I've got a couple Zane Grey novels here beside me. And this one here, Zane Grey, The Border Legion. And I haven't read that one yet. So that might be one I read first off, right out of the gate. But then there's also Nevada by Zane Grey, and I've read this one before, and I love this novel. So, it's a toss-up whether I read a new one or one I've read before that I already love. So look at that fantastic cover. I don't know who did that, but it's just like an awesome cover for Nevada. Now, I got most of Louis L'Amour. I've got most of his books. I think I'm only missing about 7 or 8 of them. So I had a lot to choose from for Louis L'Amour. So I just went onto my shelves and I chose a few at random. So I will probably choose from these ones that I have beside me to read for June on the Range. And these are in no particular order. But I have Radigan by Louis L'Amour. I'm trying to get my glare on the cover here. There's Radigan, and here of course is a classic, Hondo, and that's also his first novel based on the short story called The Gift of Cochise. Now for the movie Hondo, they took his short story, Louis L'Amour's short story, The Gift of Cochise, they adapted it to the movie, and then Louis L'Amour took the movie screenplay and adapted it into his longer novel called Hondo. So I've read all these Louis L'Amours before. I've read all the Louis L'Amours on my shelf. So, you know, it's just a matter of finding one that I want to read again. And they're all rereadable. Louis L'Amour is just one of the great Western writers, and he's, you know, highly rereadable. I love his books. So that's Hondo. Then I have an older one in these Ace paperbacks, Showdown at Yellow Butte. And that's an early one by Louis L'Amour. You can usually tell which ones are his early ones. The Fawcett Gold Medal books are his early novels, and this is an Ace novel, which Louis L'Amour, for the most part, dealt with Bantam books. So when you see an Ace or a Fawcett Gold Medal, you know that these are early stories of Louis L'Amour. And then I have, and these are all chosen randomly, this is Kilroan with that awesome cover there. Then I have The Burning Hills. And last but not least, I grabbed Bendigo Shafter with that fantastic cover. So those are the mandatory reads, Louis L'Amour and Zane Grey. Now I got a lot of Westerns on my shelf, and I haven't read them all, unfortunately, and that's my bad. I've got to get to them. But I've got a lot of really early paperbacks, you know, the small paperback size. I think I went through them on another channel of mine, or another episode of mine. But and again, I haven't chosen any of these. These are just ones I might read. You know, I'll when the time comes, I'll decide what I want to read, what I feel like reading. But this is called Outlaws 3 by Peter Field. And these are only a few I have on my shelf. This is The Challenger by Giles A. Lutz. And this is an Ace double. So if you flip it around, you've got The Phantom Pistolier by Tom West. Stagecoach Kingdom by Harry Sinclair Drago. And these paperbacks are, I think, from the 40s or 50s. Like, look at that. That's cool. I love these old paperbacks. This is from that's odd. There's no year on the inside cover, but that front cover is by Robert Stanley. Another one by Harry Sinclair Drago, Epitaph for a Marshal, with that awesome cover. Marshal of Sundown by Jackson Gregory. And here's an awesome Luke Short book, Bought with the Gun. I have quite a few Luke Short on my shelf, and he was one of the big Western writers back in the day. Action at Three Peaks by Frank O'Rourke. And I have an Ernest Haycox, which was another fantastic Western writer, Man in the Saddle, with that old pulpy cover. So I haven't decided which ones of them I'm going to read yet. But I also have a lot of, oh, here's a few more too. I've got some later paperbacks, which you've probably seen on my intro. War Bonnet, a fast-action novel about the taming of the Wild West, and that's a beautiful wraparound cover. And I have Ralph Cotton, Killing Plain, Dodge City Trail by Ralph Compton. That was a whole series of cattle drive novels. So yeah, that's a few of my fiction books that I'm going to read, but I also have a lot of nonfiction stuff. Like, for instance, like I collect anything to do with the time. This is called Soiled Doves: Prostitution in the Early West. Now, you know, there's it's actually I've read part of this already. It's kind of a fascinating history to that whole thing, and you know, it's just a rich vein to tap the American West and its history. And I've got almost the entire series of the Old West Time Life books, and these are fascinating. These are actually really good reads, and they're just full of awesome photographs from back in the day, you know. And so I'm gonna peruse them. Here's the Gunfighters edition. That's probably my favorite one out of the whole series, and that's just a very cool cover. That might be Charlie Russell or Frederick Remington, that cover. I've got comics. Here's a hardcover graphic novel of Louis L'Amour's story, Law of the Desert Born. And that was compiled by his son, Beau L'Amour. And it's just got some very cool artwork in there. So I might be reading that. I know I got a lot to read over the month of June, and I won't get to it all. But I mean, it's nice to have options. And also, I'll be watching a lot of Western films. I have a pretty extensive Western DVD library. I mean, I don't really collect a lot of DVDs, but the Westerns, whenever I do see them, I pick them up because they're hard to find on streaming services. You know, I mean, you know how many streaming services there are out there, and you got to pay for every one. So I mean, if you want to watch a good Western, I don't want to have to you know, pay for it every time I want to see a good old Western. So I got quite a few Westerns up on my DVD shelf. So I'm going to be immersing myself in the movies, probably, you know, the old standbys, the Clint Eastwood Man with No Name trilogy, and a few good old John Wayne Westerns, maybe a couple of the oldies like The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, you know, a couple of Randolph Scott movies. But then there's the independent Westerns too, the newer Westerns, The Proposition, yeah. So I mean, we'll see. Well, I'm just going to play it by ear. And also, you see behind me, I've got the player's manual for Red Dead Redemption. I've got the original Red Dead Redemption video game for PS3, and I've got Red Dead Redemption 2 on the PS4. So if I do happen to find a little spare time between reading and watching movies, I might just sit down and relax and play a good Western video game. I mean, for those of you who do play games and you do have, you know, some game consoles and you want to play a good game, both of those games are just incredible games. A lot of fun. And yeah, I don't play the games that often anymore, video games, but I will sit down and I will immerse myself in those Western video games. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I just wanted to thank Michael for inviting me to be a co-host for this June on the Range. It's an incredible event. I mean, yeah, I'm excited to get into it, and I will keep you informed as we go into June, and as we carry on through my June on the Range journey, and I will update you on what I'm reading, what I'm watching, and what I'm playing. And I hope you guys are well. I'll let you go. You guys take care and keep reading.